Have a closer look at the growing numbers of school threats across the state. This month alone in Connecticut, police investigated 20 threats and made 15 arrests. But what happens next is not always clear, especially when the suspect is a juvenile. Eyewitness News chief investigative reporter Matthew Campbell is shedding some light on the consequences for making school threats.
It seems like each day we're reporting on a school threat, so I want to start here with this map. These are the locations of the 20 threats that have been made in or against our local schools in December. We've seen bomb threats, firearm threats, social media threats. They result in lockdowns, early dismissals, cancellations, and just a general sense of fear for parents and students. And many times they end with arrests, but we don't really hear much more after that.
It's just kind of scary, you know.
Police across Connecticut have been busy this month responding and investigating threats against our schools in every corner of our state. We've seen a student allegedly bring a gun to Farmington. A group chat threat was made in Stratford. A bomb threat was made against a school in Danbury. And on December 6th, 8 New Haven schools got a threat. Dozens of schools recently were dealing with threats made on social media.
This is just getting out of hand, and it's scary.
After police investigate, arrests are made. So far, police have taken 15 people into custody this month for threats made against schools. Many of them are juveniles, some as young as 13 years old.
Kids will be kids, but today's day, you never know, because every day it seems like there's something new going on somewhere around the country and the world.
But what happens next? The I-Team looked through each school threat made this month, specifically looking at the charges that were filed. Obviously, they vary by case. For example, in Farmington, where a 14-year-old student was arrested for bringing a gun to school, that student was charged with illegal possession of a weapon on school grounds and carrying a pistol without a permit. In other cases, we've seen charges like terroristic threatening, first-degree threatening, but the most common is breach of peace.
Usually our reporting ends with the arrests and charges, but not tonight. The I-Team is digging deeper to learn the actual consequences these charges carry.
We went to the Tau Youth Justice Institute at the University of New Haven. This is a group that researches and leads discussions around juvenile justice. Erica Nowakowski is the associate director.
We need to understand why, the why. You know, what was happening with that child?
Nowakowski says after an arrest, 2 paths can be taken: detention and non-detention routes. There are 2 detention centers in Connecticut, one in Hartford and one in Bridgeport. Kids here are locked up. There are also a handful of residential detention centers. These facilities are secured by staff members. Experts say the average stay in residential detention centers is 3 to 6 months.
Some of these facilities were not designed for long-term sentencing.
Juvenile offenders who face non-detention punishments often undergo counseling, probation, therapeutic intervention, which was explained to us as comprehensive counseling, and cognitive behavioral therapy. Nowakowski says it expands beyond the juvenile suspect.
Not just the child, but the child and the family to the appropriate services in the community.
Now that the range of punishments have been explained, we wanted to know which route is most commonly taken for those making threats against schools.
I think it's too early to tell, to be honest, right now. I think most recently, our detention numbers have not been high.
Nowakowski says generally detention is reserved for the more serious charges. Many who get charged with the less severe breach of peace cases get sent on the non-detention path.
Therapeutic services that are provided in the community is probably the best appropriate place for them.
Experts say many of the cases involving just breach of peace are examples of threats that were found not to be credible. And even though there was no imminent danger with those, punishments need to be given. And in those cases, we're seeing the majority of offenders avoid detention. Experts say the reason we're seeing many of those lower offenses referred out of court is to make an attempt to rehabilitate rather than incarcerate, especially for kids under 18. Matthew Campbell, Channel 13 News.